Torentsu Reviews Mortal Kombat Trilogy is brought to you by XSplit Video Recording Software. Not really, but we're too cheap to pay to remove the watermark.
That was pathetic.
Back in 1996, Mortal Kombat Trilogy was released as an update to Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, which was itself an update to the vanilla Mortal Kombat 3. Mortal Kombat Trilogy was then soon updated with Super Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 HD Hyper Fighting Turbo Remix The New Challengers. Well, not really, of course, but the game itself was an update to Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, made with the intention of bringing back all the characters from the old games, making a couple of familiar faces playable as a human for the first time. Now, I remember reading a review for this game in GamePro magazine, and I looked down and there was a screenshot of the Fighter Select screen, and I was like, wow, look at all those characters. Here's a shot of it in action now. There's quite a lot of characters, huh? Now, the kid in me didn't even care about the regular combatants so much as the row of the bosses at the bottom. Other than a few of the old 16-bit ports letting you play as Shao Kahn and Motoro, this was kind of a big deal. Never had Goro or Kintaro been playable in a Mortal Kombat game, and at this point, playing of them was going to be so awesome, I was sure of it. I remember I went to the video store and I asked them, when are you getting this game? It's going to be great. And they said, we're getting it, I don't remember, I think it was like that weekend. Ironically, they were planning on getting that game back in, and it was the N64 version. I was like, oh, this is the era of N64 versus PlayStation. I'm sure they're going to be the exact same game. So I went and rented the thing and loaded it up, and in my excitement, getting ready for that Goro versus Kintaro crap match that I was about to have, I pressed start and got this. Immediately, you can see the strength of the PlayStation version compared to the N64 version. It's not that the N64 isn't a solid game, but lacking the wow factor of the PlayStation. Now, I'm a sucker for a fighting game with a large cast, and even though honestly the difference in characters isn't that great when you look at the actual effort Boone and crew put into the bosses as playable characters. Admittedly, I haven't spent a lot of time playing Mortal Kombat Trilogy at a competitive level, and just because it's a 20-year-old game that you really just play alone unless you got a lot of friends. I don't have a lot of friends. Something like Mortal Kombat 1 through 3, which were big in the arcades and even continue to be played on Xbox Live and the PlayStation Network now, just get a lot more thorough examination. That being said, you don't have to play this game at a high level to notice that most of the new additions didn't get much playtesting and honestly are quite broken. In the hands of the right player, Noob Saibot and Rain are nearly unbeatable and can string more infinites together than Buzz Lightyear. Likewise, the bosses that I was so excited about playing about as a kid are more or less just poorly hacked in. Genesis MK hackers like Smoke and that guy who made Ultimate Mortal Kombat Trilogy on the Genesis were able to do much better than Goro and the gang that Ed Boon ever did with the professional Mortal Kombat development team. A lot of the stuff feels like a lot of MK games lately. This is a lot of cool stuff we can do for the player, but what's the fastest and least efficient way we can get it in there? If you take a look at Mortal Kombat Armageddon, it's got a lot of characters, but just like Trilogy, most of them really aren't that unique. I just feel like this is something that's plagued the MK development team through the years. I understand during the early games you had to palette swap the ninjas and other characters to save memory, but at the point where we're developing for console, we should be willing to take our time and make a better product for people. Besides those bozos, and the other fact of broken characters and such things, all the Mortal Kombat games contain some degree of brokenness. Even Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, which we consider the pinnacle of Mortal Kombat competition, other than MK9 of course, it has a lot of infinites. Most of them are not so easy that your average player can pull them off, so it doesn't really matter that much online. But it's still enough that some characters are more of a challenge maybe than they should be. Another problem we have in this game is with the music. All the music comes from the first 3 games, which isn't really a bad thing, but for some reason they decided to do CD-style audio. Now let me elaborate. In the PlayStation era, games were getting onto disc, so sometimes they would use games just like a CD. You know how you have tracks 1 through 20-ish? Well, a couple of those things will be unplayable data tracks, and the rest will be just like CD audio. Tekken is another game that functions like this. With Mortal Kombat Trilogy, you could pop the bad boy in a CD player and show your friends how cool you were for listening to Mortal Kombat music in your car or radio. Unfortunately, this made it some weird loading things. In some games it was a good idea, like Tekken, it was very well implemented, but with MK you get a lot of problems. Sound jumps in and out at some point. Sometimes, like in this review video footage, you'll see it doesn't load at all. And then other times, when you're in the middle of a match, the song will just change out of nowhere. And also, when the match is over, it just abruptly cuts off. At least in the arcade version, even though the matches were quick and you didn't get to hear the whole song, they would play that little ender note to make it look like the song ended where it should. However, here it just kind of drops out, and it's very noticeable. You'll long for the smooth, refined taste of the sound in the arcade version as soon as you start playing this one. I also have to talk about the graphics. The graphics are good, but they definitely took a hit when you compare them to the arcade versions, which in the 90s was to be expected. Arcade perfect ports were still several years in the making. One thing I do hold against MK Trilogy is because of its very existence, we didn't get a really good port of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 anywhere until the Xbox ports. The Super NES and Genesis versions were shallow shells of games that had to skimp on much content to get other content. It was less of an expansion and more of a, here's some new stuff, but we had to take away some old stuff. Sorry, LOL. Despite a few hiccups and sound abnormalities and weird oddities going on here and there, Mortal Kombat Trilogy on the PlayStation remains a must-play for fans of the old MK series. All the characters from the old games make appearances, and a few of the characters' classic forms are playable. How would you like to take Mortal Kombat 1 Kano and pit him against Motaro and the rest of the cast, for example? The one problem with these characters is they don't really fit in with the new generation physics, and they didn't really add any sprites for a few new things like they should. For example, the new characters don't so much have a run animation as they just sped up their walk animation. It looks really poorly done and lame, like something out of a ROM hack. Imagine if you worked at a company for 7 years and they decided they wanted to send the version of you from your first year there to do a job made for the 5-year pro. The essentials that got you the job to begin with are there, but they're not as refined. This is what it looks like when you put these characters from Mortal Kombat 1 up against the new guys. Either way, if you haven't played Mortal Kombat Trilogy by this point, go pick it up and give it a whirl. The N64 one might even be worth a try too. It doesn't have quite all the features and characters, but it does have a few odd things